I'm sorry?
Hey, hi. Good evening and good morning to all of you. I'm sorry we are a little late, couple of minutes. There was a technical glitch, and Mark was not able to log in.
It wasn't
Anyways,
just Mark. It wasn't just Mark. It was me too.
all right, welcome,
Mark,
welcome both
as
of you.
Mark has proudly said, I may not be a dinosaur, but when it comes to technology, I must admit I'm probably an early stage mammal.
Oh, you and me both. You and me both.
Yeah, I'm a little bit ahead, I would say.
Yes, I would say
Yeah,
you
so
have.
today, the more younger you are, the more tech savvy you are, isn't it? I mean that's the contradiction which we see.
Oh,
Well, it's true. I don't think there's ever been a generation where the younger people have such an advantage of knowledge
Oh yeah,
because
oh yeah.
in fact, someone once said, those of us who grew up, let's say, in school without the internet, are we will always be internet immigrants, while those that grew up with the internet are internet natives.
so
And as
I
an immigrant, I will never learn to speak the language quite as well as a native.
I think about this all the time. I look at the Mediterranean around 1200 BC, and you see these people called the Sea People come in, and nobody knows who the Sea People were. There was famine, there was a horrible climate change, there was all sorts of things happening at that time in 9 different civilizations, and these Sea People came in. Now, these Sea People came in with a new technology. It was called iron, and they were able to create heat hot enough to turn this horrible stuff into something called steel. And it was those people who ravaged the civilization and brought down the Bronze Age. It was this new and emerging technology where these new people, these migrants coming in, were able to actually make things happen. It was only Egypt, because it was so big, that was able to actually withstand the strength of the Sea People. And what you're talking about, Mark, is not just once. It's new and emerging technology that frightens everybody, that changes everybody. And this is just what we go through over and over and over again.
Yeah, and to be fair to
Yep.
myself, while I jokingly call myself, an early stage mammal, I must admit, especially since COVID, I've had to really dig into learning so much more about technology than I ever expected to. And, one of the consequences is, of course, being a participant on these kinds of, great podcasts and opportunities to share. And as we'll talk, running all kinds of Zoom meetings and doing therapy now all the time, running groups of all kinds. So it shows you sometimes an old dog can learn new tricks. That's the
Right, right. Let's talk more about this, but as always, let me introduce. I know people know you both already, but for the new uh, audiences or the viewers we have, my name is Kumar Pushpak, and I head the team here at Jonas Services. Along with me, we have Tim Jerome and Mark Gokin. Both resides in US, but different corners in a different time zone. But
Yeah.
having said that, yeah, having said that, today the topic that we have chosen, it's a very common topic. We have been hearing out, and a lot of people has been questioning it. Uh, there's a curiosity, I must admit, regarding the isolation, the kind of living now we are living. The kind of living that we are living as of today is completely different than we ever thought before 2020 came in. Uh, Now, work from home is very common. I mean, most of us doing work from home. It used to be fun, if you ask me, my personal view. It used to be fun when it come in for 2 days, 3 days, maximum a week or two. Now we have done this for almost 8 months, and it's still continuing. We wanted to hear out people with their experience. How does this feel now? Because I personally had a few of my colleagues calling me and said that, Kumar, please open up the office. I'm fed up. I need to come to office. I want to see my colleagues. Sitting in a room within the four walls is not helping me anymore. Call me back. So this, I'm sure a lot of managers, a lot of businesses, a lot of colleagues has this uh, thing coming in now. They are either fed up, they are either living in isolation, not liking it. But yeah, I'll open up this discussion with Tim and Mark. Mark is especially here to talk on the isolation living, how it is affecting, and how we can actually overcome the boredom, which comes the way. So I open up Tim and Mark.
So you have a couple good points, Kumar, and I'll actually ask Mark some great questions. So you have this isolation that you and we've been talking about, and we have this frustration. Is the frustration getting bigger or larger, or are we getting used to this frustration, or is it just something we're all trying to ignore?
I think Kumar said it well, Tim. Initially, it's almost like a honeymoon. It's different. It's new. I don't have to commute. I have all this freedom. I can sit at my computer in my underwear if I want. Nobody can see. It's almost like a game initially. And maybe for a few weeks, even a month. But after a while, we realize we're still social animals. And that sense of being alone, feeling like, hey, am I in the loop anymore? What's going on? All that kind of takes a toll. And then, of course, not everybody's only alone. I have a good friend who's, both sort of working from home as self-employed, but also has to be the parent teacher on the internet for his daughter, for his 10-year-old daughter. And that's a whole new challenge and demand and strain, because actually his wife, works for the Department of Defense, so to speak, and she's going into work at least every other week. So he's got not just the challenge of being alone, but he's also got the challenge of suddenly having to be a parent and teacher in a way that, is very different. So whether you're single or whether you're part of a family, there are a lot of new challenges that can be, after a while, become draining. And as we talked about, isolating.
Yeah.
So clearly today, one of the things we're going to talk about, and this is where I think if technology is used the right way, in a smart way, but more than a smart way, in a title of one of my books is Preserving Human Touch in a High-Tech World. So how do we build in this COVID world, real human connection for support as well as work productivity?
Go ahead, Kumar.
No, I mean, yeah, I have questions from the viewers as well, which I received in the last couple of days. But before that, I ask you, I wanted to understand your view, your experience, how this isolation and pandemic has treated you so far. Mark.
Ironically, I feel a little bit guilty because I'm one of those people who are busier than ever, because I am providing all these different kinds of teletherapy services, running groups, more groups than I've ever have. So one thing I'm learning is feeling productive and doing things that are meaningful for yourself and others is a great way of not succumbing to a sense of frustration, futility, and ultimately isolation. And this is a very important and, I have learned to really take consistent breaks, both through really, really meaningful and open support groups, not that ones that I'm running, I'm participating in. I've learned to, in fact, we have a group of people who meet once a week in the outdoors, socially distanced, in a safe social distance space where we're really talking about what's going on in our lives and how we, really can support each other. I also, when I know I need to get out of the house, I will take a walk. I'm fortunate where I can walk to a lake. So I'm not just walking, but I'm also interacting with nature. And finally, I will also, whether it's on, a FaceTime kind of thing, or meet someone again at an outdoor space, like at a coffee house, and have what I call, I'm meeting up with one of my stress buddies.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm very busy at work, I'm also absolutely carving out time to keep myself connected, grounded, less stressed, and in fact, feeling very inspired and rejuvenated by these very human connections.
Interaction with nature. I mean, that's a good point. I think the more close you are to the reality, you are more happy. All right,
Yes.
Tim.
So
How your experience has been so far?
my experience, so I'm an introvert, okay? I'm a little bit lucky because I do a lot of reading and writing and research. And I do something called solitude. It's like a coin. Isolation is one side of the coin and solitude is the other. But like you, Mark, if I'm really not careful, that solitude is what turns into isolation if I don't remain connected, if I don't have a reason to do what I'm doing. My children right now, I have 2 adult children. And if I don't connect with them one way or another every 2 days, I feel like a ship that's in a harbor, but it doesn't have any connection to the dock. When I'm not going outside a lot, when I have back-to-back meetings and I forget why these meetings are here, and I think to myself, Tim, you're miserable and it's all your fault. And this is what I wanted to explore with you, Mark. Is it the workers? Is it the people who are displaced that actually are responsible for their isolation versus their being connected? Is it something that we alone can do, or is there something that business owners and companies can actually support with too? This is the question I'm looking at. Is it just giving connectivity tools? Is Zoom good enough for a company and the people will figure it out?
That's a real good question, Tim. And actually, I have a very strong opinion on this. In fact, I've said, enough meetings, too many Zoom meetings, and the participants begin to turn into zombies. So the point is, that Zoom alone isn't the answer. There are two other things that have to come into play if we're talking about the workplace. You have to have leadership and management that understand that they have a role to play in the welfare, the wellness, and the productivity of their employees. You know, on one level, they know, hey, my vision is very important to inspire people, to get them committed, to, you know, work up to their potential. But we sometimes forget that when we're in a psychological crisis, and that's really what this COVID is in a way. The crisis is when we're thrust into a new situation and suddenly all my old skills are not sufficient. And I've got to create a rapid learning curve, or I'm going to, you know, drown or disappear as an individual or as a company. So we've got to adapt quickly. And one of the things that can help employees, I'm convinced, I mean, I see it in the work that I'm doing, is how can you not just have a Zoom meeting, but how can you create in a social media platform experience an opportunity for your employees to really share and connect with one another, share their stresses, their challenges, find out, wow, I'm not alone. You mean someone else is really beginning to get their day started in a productive way, not just through coffee, but maybe doing a little meditation and getting themselves really set in their mind. What are the different activities that I want to address? How can I anticipate that I'm going to need some breaks? That sharing of ideas, it doesn't have to be a gripe session. You know, I think, if you let people really talk, all they're going to do is gripe and moan. And no, this is an inspiration session. This is a way of really, you know, we'll talk about it more, but Tim and I were really talking about a concept I came up with is that, you know, we all hear the expression, there's no I in team. I'm not so convinced. But what I came up with, there may be no I in team, but there are two I's in winning. And winning teams, and these I's can see, winning teams blend individual creativity, individual capability, and interactive community, intimate communication. I see two. Winning teams blend individual creativity and intimate interactive community. Honest, open sharing with appropriate, safe boundaries.
This is very interesting. One of the definitions of motivation I found is from a leader's perspective. You're right, the leader sets the vision, but what if a leader is able to motivate? And motivation here, you can actually define motivation as fulfilling personal needs through the work they do, connecting people's work to fulfilling their personal needs. Now, we could talk about Maslow, but what you're talking about is actually saying, okay, let's actually restructure the work for you such that it's fulfilling your needs. When you need time out, let's give you some individual work to work on. And when you need to be more involved in people, do that. That means that the leader and manager are going to have to stop, getting involved in the work itself, and they're going to have to start pulling back and actually investing more in the people. And we're talking about heading towards more of a servant leadership model. Is that what you're talking about?
I think that's certainly, if a leader is too intrusive, you're not really people are going to follow the leader, not become in a way their own initiators, their own creators. A leader that's too intrusive is really stifling whatever individual creativity may emerge, both through the individual effort and through that synergy. I think I've talked about before a great book, The Power of Two, talks about how real creativity often comes when you allow sort of two peers who have common themes and thoughts, but have some real differences. Let them interact, fight a little bit, challenge each other, motivate, push each other to new depths. The great example they gave in the book was, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, had a lot of things in common, not besides, musical genius. Mothers had died before they were 18. They had some real, but they were very different in their styles. Paul was the nice, kind of sweet guy. John tried to be a hard-edged rocker, and in fact, when he was getting too hard-edged, Paul would, modify him. And when Paul was getting too sappy in his lyrics, John would challenge him. Come on, make it more real. And that back and forth is what brought out that collective Beatles genius, as well as the input from.
Can I add something here?
If leaders are too heavy-handed, you're stifling your people from discovering their own energy, creativity, and potential synergy.
Right. Can I?
So that's what this Zoom group
Add something
I'm
here.
discovering. That the group that I'm leading, if you have a facilitator that understands, Tim, how to step back and let the process flow, intervene when there's obviously some blockage in the dam, but let people bring out and discover their sense of meaning and purpose, pain, as well as joy. That's when you get that new creative flow.
Can I add something here, Mark and Tim? We're talking about interactive community, right? We're talking about the artifacts or the behavior of a leader out there. What I have felt over the period is nothing is constant, especially the methodologies and the words that we use to interact. Let me give you an example here. I used to, and I think most of the parents used to keep the phone, tablets, or the laptops, basically the screen, away from the kids. Right? We used to say it's not good for your eyes. It's not good for your development. We used to say this, right? Offlet. I mean, this is a part of life. I mean, I hand over my laptop and tablet to my kid, and I have actually been talking to many of the parents. They had been doing the same. They say that, hey, you know what? In this lockdown, the best friend of my kid is this tablet or the PC, right? So one contradiction there. We as a leader, let me take you back in 2019, before 2020 era. We did not. Okay, let me take my example in person. Okay, I was not in a favor of work from home, not because of the isolation piece, because that time the isolation was never in the picture, but it was more of a productivity side. I personally felt the people, when I give them a permission to do work from home, the productivity used to dip, right? So I never promoted that. But look at me now. I'm promoting it. I'm actually doing everything possible to make my colleagues, my people, work from home. So what I mean is basically, with time, everything changes. Now, this particular change, this change, how you consume it. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I personally feel a bit tougher job when you ask me to switch from gear 1 to gear 2 without any reason.
Well, you sense the reason. It wasn't without any reason. Whether it was your intuition, your vision as a leader, your understanding that now a new crisis demands change and new behavior. And yes, there's going to be some feeling of loss and anxiety.
Crisis.
Yeah, it's a crisis. And you know what? Chinese have two images for crisis. One is danger, one is opportunity. The old Kumar think, oh, the danger, they won't work as hard as home. They'll be goofing off, that. But the opportunity is to discover that with good leadership and good resources, people can be productive at home.
Tim, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Tim, I have a question for you. Since you always talk about 200 BC, 2000 BC, I have a question. I know you are good at history, but I'm looking at your books. What do you say the humanity or the human, when they have actually did a shift? Was it more when they were in crisis, or was it more when they wanted to change, or they basically wanted to evolve?
So I'm going to take a very pragmatic standpoint on this. Human beings are basically lazy. We are very successful because we're able to conserve energy. And so we'll make a change at the very last moment. And it's not because we're bad lazy. It's because we're conserving energy, just like a lion on the savannah. We're sitting down because those jewels of energy that we have are what going to make us survive over and over and over. It's our programming. At the same time, there are a side of us who have a beautiful little machine on top that we've learned how to take care of. And we've learned how to modify that little robot on top of our head. And we can actually use that to, like you said, is there something I can do that gives me more with less? And when we get into this crisis, it's like, number one, we're threatened, so we want to protect ourselves. But at the same time, number two, is there opportunity? And again, I'm not saying bad or good. This is not an ethical thing. It's just very pragmatic. It's the nature of humans to, number one, be lazy, and number two, say, what is the opportunity here? And all of a sudden, with working from home and being a little bit more in control of my life, a lot of us have actually said, wow, I can get more work done and I can connect with my family more. It's funny because you were exactly right, Mark. It's two sides of a coin. There's a crisis and there is an opportunity. And entrepreneurs look at every crisis as an opportunity. The front door won't open, the back door won't open. Here's a kitchen window. and that's what we're discovering.
Let me give an example of that, in the work that I'm doing with a mental health clinic, where more and more people were wanting to talk. We didn't have enough staff to handle all the people asking for help or information, and I said, you know what? Let me try running some groups where one therapist can see a number of people at the same time. And of course, for me, it was learning new Zoom. That's what really brought me to get my own Zoom account, or my business, pays for it. And suddenly, not suddenly, but it's slowly. We've got 2 or 3 people coming in, got 5 people. Now we're, getting people 5, 6, 7, 8. and it's growing. And where I started with one Zoom group, now there are 2 Zoom groups. And from a business point of view, I'm getting, instead of $50 an hour, let's say, I'm getting 50 times $7 an hour. And the company is billing accordingly.
Right.
So everyone is benefiting by this small adaptation. Companies making more money. I'm making more money as an individual, and more people are getting unique help. They're not just getting information from me, but you know what? Who do you think? These are folks that live in DC, in a hard-scrabble neighborhood of DC. Who really knows their lifestyle better than each other? I can tell. I remember, saying to this woman, this is what, really think about this. And as much as she trusted me, it wasn't until she heard her peers say the same thing that she really believed it, because they really walk in her shoes. I'm just the expert.
Mhm.
They really live and die together, these folks. So in a way, that's the spirit that is really potentially present if we can create these kinds of really hybrid, I'm calling them webinar, as well as, real participatory support groups. They have a chance to unleash untapped knowledge, energy, inspiration in your workplace.
So you become the facilitator. You create the playground, and the people who actually are able to use the playground in innovative ways you didn't even think of.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. This is getting interesting, because I was doing a bit of the same thing. I've started some nonprofit through a nonprofit organization. I've started some work that helps people gather every Sunday for an hour and a half, and we talk about project management, right, and management and leadership, and I sit back. I created a structure, and I created a little bit of organization, but all of a sudden these people were inspired, and their common theme is they're all managers, and they were never taught to be managers, and so all of a sudden I'm not leading a presentation. I'm not directing anything. It's these people are exploring and testing and discovering themselves with like you said, with an expert. Here's what we're talking about. And this is exciting.
Redesign the tool, improve it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is keying in to one of the super strengths of human beings, which is curiosity. I think that what you're
collaboration, curiosity
exactly.
and collaboration.
There you go. And go ahead.
No, you're. I just suddenly hit me that curiosity and collaboration is what has really led to advancement.
Yes.
Human nature.
We are too curious, and this is what's really weird. And this is what actually can break down the boundaries of isolation. I found when I'm struggling with a concept, I feel alone, and I feel like I can't push this boulder. But when I pick up a book and this author is speaking so clearly to me, or I talk to a friend, or I go into my book club, they're saying just the right thing, and it works as a catalyst to break things through. And this is that insightful creativity and intimate communication happening. And the beautiful thing is, we don't have to push a boulder to make it happen. It almost triggers itself. We just have to put ourselves in the right environment with the right mixture of people.
Let's call it Kumar's platform is what is bringing it to life right at this very moment. That's
Exactly.
the point.
Exactly.
Combination of technology that Kumar really has an understanding of. It's a combination of conceptual understanding that Tim, you have, I have to some degree, and Kumar. And then it's that we're creating this collaborative space.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's the individual capability, the individuals with the insightful creativity, that curiosity, and that intimate communication, being able to actually break down our own personal boundaries to explore these things.
You know what? Let me add one thing. It's also a little ego.
Important is
hey, when I create an idea, I don't want to keep it to myself. I want to show people, hey, I think I've created something really good, really powerful.
Exactly.
Me, little old me.
Exactly.
We need that sometimes to be able to, stand on the mountain and say, hey, I did it. And well, it's great to feel that alone. It's even greater when you can share it.
Right.
And know that you're helping people. You've transcended yourself.
You know what I just heard in the last minute? This is what I heard in the last minute. You went from Maslow's social need fulfillment to Maslow's recognition and esteem needs, and then to Maslow's self-actualization needs in a minute. That's
the needs
amazing.
of a narcissist. Let's be honest. Come on, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was. I wanted to pick one more question here related to this isolation part versus the collaboration piece that we just spoke about. How true is this that in the isolation, innovation dies?
In isolation, innovation dies. So,
yeah, you see where this question is coming in from. We have seen in past, and we have experienced that your innovative minds work better when you talk, when you interact, when you collaborate, right? But often when you start living in isolation, when you start working in isolation, where your interaction is very minimal, it's very virtual, it's very in a commas, inverted commas, how do you innovate?
Okay, but let's. I agree. And there's different theories of, let's say, creativity. There's the lone wolf, with that sort of brilliant or crazy, mind that's just going to think things that no one else is thinking of. But as I said, there's more and more research that's showing, well, it's an integration of the two. Even Lennon and McCartney would go off and do their own things, and they would have the kernel of genius, but it was finally coming together that really polished the stone.
So there's
really, yes.
There's something called solitude in when you have somebody who's intensely creative. They have to have solitude where they go out and they do that deep exploring, and they're creating a language around what they've discovered so they can bring back that wisdom. But you're right. If you don't have control of that solitude, it can flip on you. Solitude is the bright side of the coin of isolation.
Also, sometimes that mad genius, not mad, but that solitary genius doesn't fully understand the parameters of the society in which he or she is a part of. So that and I remember reading about creativity, that tension is such an important part of the creative process. Mm-hmm. And you have to almost need people to push back against your idea for you to keep further refining it and developing it and make it, because real creativity isn't just something that's brilliant in your own head. It's got to really make an impact on the society in which you're involved. It's got to understand the parameters of that social, political context. And that's where it doesn't have to conform to it. It's going to ultimately, the individual is going to push society into realizing, oh, wow, we've been conserving our energy too much. As you were saying, we've been conservative. Now there's an opportunity to be a little revolutionary or challenge ourselves. And that's where the individual often comes in. It's the individual that challenges the status quo.
And that's the job of the leader. It's a relationship between leadership and the workers, because the workers have the innovation, they have the great idea, and the leader has the vision. And you're right, there's a crucible right in the middle between these workers and the leader, and it's the relationship between the two. And it's not
That's the interactive community, intimate communication.
Intimate communication. Without that pressure and tension turns into conflict. And I've seen that in the work environment where that tension is not understood. That tension is good. It's like a bow that's a tight string about ready to shoot the arrow. But if you don't
understand, it's the tension that creates the diamond.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, a wonderful thing happens is when we're studying this and we're talking about this right now on this show, this creativity and this engagement in creativity all of a sudden pushes all sense of isolation away. And all of a sudden, this curiosity and creativity takes center stage, and I no longer am that boat in the middle of the harbor where I could dash myself in the rocks.
I think you're really helping me crystallize it. It's each person has to find their own source of individual meaning. Real sense of, and as you said, hey, am I having an opportunity to develop skills, to develop emotional muscles, to develop communicational muscles that, if I'm honest with myself, boy, I want to work on these things so I can be a more effective individual, a more effective spouse, a more effective parent, a more effective professional colleague.
So Marcus would agree with you, Marcus Aurelius, and he would say without a healthy beehive, there's no healthy bee, and without a healthy bee, there is no healthy beehive. We have to have work on ourselves.
Realize if without individual sort of gadflies, we have groupthink. Everybody thinks alike, but without the group challenging the individual, we have people just kind of running off and doing their own thing, which may or maybe have a possibility for being productive, but it's not connected to what's our problem-solving reality.
And the problem is it's not helping the individual either. Being an explorer is like picking up seashells. Now, as a child picking up seashells, it's fun. But as an adult, what's the use of it? How does it fulfill who I am? And there's this wonderful thing called purpose. The diamond that we're talking about in a company or a group is moving the group forward. It's the group progress. But the diamond for the individual is the personal purpose. How does that help me fulfill who I am more? And how does that help me enjoy life?
And I just wanted to build on your analogy of that the person finding those seashells and suddenly realizing, hey, wait a second, we can turn these seashells into a form of monetary exchange. And we can begin to build societies around these seashells, social, financial interaction and engagement and bartering. And suddenly a little seashell, someone has the creative idea of making it much more than just a seashell.
But the thing is, if you do it by yourself, you never understand that it has values to others.
Right. That's exactly. And in fact, maybe the individual has to, almost like, Tom Sawyer and painting that fence where he got his, you've got to sell that these seashells are much more than seashells. These can be a potential commodity that we can build a society around. And initially that creative person has to be able to connect with.
And pulling this back into this whole sense of isolation, the isolation problem is just pushed off the table. There's no more room for it when we're actually looking at this sense of purpose plus this interaction for the big picture.
And think about it. How often, or from just this meeting, the three of us talking, I know I'm going to go away and start thinking on my own about some new ideas. So collaboration doesn't have to stifle individuality. It can spur it on, new individual thinking. And then I'm going to come back with some new ideas and bug you guys and say, hey, we should be really working on this. Do you see what I'm saying? It's an ebb and flow, each enriching the other.
This is a wonderful, wonderful model. This is not just a model. This is how life actually does progress. It's like you said, it's that individual capability, insightful creativity, and intimate communication. There you go.
And I'm going to create one other dynamic. It always involves a little tension. And here's the tension I'm going to create for all of us. I have to leave this meeting as much as I don't want to, but I have another meeting. And someone's calling me about that other meeting.
So Mark, we're going to continue this conversation in one way or another. This crucible that we're creating here is not just valuable, but it's a gift we have to give to ourselves and each other. And let's continue this. I think we have.
And I'd very much like to, really flesh out this idea of how do you create these webinar support groups for your employees so that they really can not just get the support to find meaning in isolation, but really see the value of developing ideas and brainstorming with a colleague, sharing it in the group, get the group feedback, go back. How do you really create this creative engine through individual curiosity and team collaboration? So that's what I'd like to, that's the concept that I want for us to really put out there. And the final thought is what makes it unique is it requires facilitators who understand the potential of technology, who have had to adapt it in a way that it allows leaders, facilitators, coaches to communicate in a deeper, more richer, more vulnerable, more real manner. And that it becomes both a role model and a platform for other employees to engage in this richer kind of communication and mutual motivation and support. And I really want to see this as not something that's so, out of the realm of possibility. I want the three of us to be like the three wise men who are going to help people appreciate the value of this kind of concept for themselves as leaders, for their employees, to get really greater connection, to see this crisis as an opportunity for new learning, sharing, exploring, and inspiration. So enough of my.
Yeah, and this is a call out to everybody watching this right now. If you're curious about this idea, contact us. If you have questions, or if you want to participate in something like this, if you want to learn to be a facilitator, talk to us about this. We have deep access to other experts, but Mark hits it right on the nose. This is something that we do humanly and naturally, and we forget that we have this capability, and it shows up in the middle of crisis. And let's take advantage of this. We're on our way. And we have some activities that are going on. If you want to participate with us, please tell us. But again, if you want to be a facilitator, or if you want to actually start some of these groups, please reach out to us. And we're going to continue this discussion, by the way.
I've got to be on my way.
Okay.
And Kumar, thank you. Tim, thank you. And as I say, to be continued.
Yes. Thank you again.
Pleasure is all mine.
Namaste.
Let's connect next week and continue this discussion. There is a lot of questions that are still not taken. So we look forward to see you again next week, Thursday.
Great.
Thanks again, everyone.
Okay.
And thank you, Mark and Kumar.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you all. Okay, gang.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Thanks again.